I recently rewatched the 2005 Peter Jackson King Kong, and now we're going to talk about it. So there are a few things that I kind of want to touch on in this overall kind of review type thing. I want to speak about the story and its relation to the 1933 King Kong. I mainly want to talk about the creatures, and I want to talk about CGI and all that good stuff. First, let's talk about the story. The story is very, very faithful to the original 1933 King Kong. A lot of the story beats are practically the same. You know, you have a filmmaker who wants to go to this uncharted island to capture all of the amazing footage there and film his overall picture. He has to lie and con his way to get everybody there, and when they're all brought there, they're all kind of just met with the most terrible island to ever be on Earth. That being Skull Island, of course. It is a fairly simple story, and that is exactly all that it needs to be. The original was during a point in time where these kind of monster films were kind of gaining their popularity. Dinosaurs were being used in movies more frequently, and this whole idea of like a lost world or the center of the Earth or a lost island was very popular around this point in time. But this one was certainly interesting because you had a giant gorilla in it that also fights dinosaurs. Where can you go wrong? And as I said, this remake is incredibly faithful to it. This remake is also incredibly long. I believe it's pushing 3 hours. There's a lot of buildup in this movie, and when they're on the island, that takes up a huge portion, and then the New York segment at the end also takes up a massive portion of the overall film. But you certainly get a lot of time to kind of be immersed in this whole world of King Kong, but there are some times that it might start to lose you, especially with the beginning portion. It's just kind of like, okay, are we going to get to the island now or what? Still, I really like the actors. I think that they did a great job. I thought that they portrayed their characters in a very fun, interesting way all around, and I really do think that they sold their parts. I have a lot of fun with Jack Black playing Carl Dunham. I think that he kind of plays the nice type of, the kind of crappy character in a very fun an interesting way. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the CGI and the overall effects that were used in this film. For a 2005 movie, this movie still looks phenomenal. The cinematography is really great. I mean, there's a lot of interesting shot usage. There's a lot of shots that are really kind of blurry, like they have a lot of motion blur to grant you a feeling of uneasiness. But the cinematography of the island in particular is really great. Like the nice and peaceful shots are really nice and peaceful. The terrifying shots are very terrifying. And the CGI that went into the creatures is so flippin' good. I still think that it holds up extremely well. This goes for the bugs, this goes for the dinosaurs, and this goes for especially for King Kong, who was portrayed by Andy Serkis years before he ever did it in Planet of the Apes as Caesar. So he was really, it's really in his roots doing stuff like this. He did a great job as Kong. You can really see the emotions come through when Kong is placed in those type of situations. You really do start to feel for Kong. Of course, he is like the whole center of the story and is a huge portion of it, especially with his relationship to Anne and just the way that all of those things move. So I think that like really getting an actor that can portray something like that well, like both feel like an actual gorilla and also convey those type of human emotions, I think was extremely important for this movie. And I think that they pull it off without a hitch. Not to mention the amazing, amazing fight scenes that we get to see. Kong versus 3 V-Rexes. I mean, the original had one T-Rex, but this one brings in 3 V-Rexes, and the camera work with this whole thing is just so incredibly well done. It tracks the action very fluently. You can feel every hit, you can hear every chomp. It's very thrilling to watch. Like my little 5-year-old brain like just loved that when I was a child, and my 24-year-old brain still loves it as an adult right now. And that kind of segues into my next thing that I want to talk about, that I always want to talk about, and that is the creature design. For me, that is often the most interesting part about a movie, is how they decide to design creatures like this, especially ones that take a lot of heavy influence from prehistoric creatures that once existed. I am called Dino Guy after all. And, you know, in universe, there is the established lore that these guys are simply just highly evolved versions of the dinosaurs that once roamed the earth. Like, this is a highly evolved brontosaurus. These are highly evolved dromaeosaurs. And this is a highly evolved Tyrannosaurus. So, of course, they do have a lot of variation in their design that would really deviate from the actual dinosaurs that existed in a way that's organic and truly does make sense. Now, they're all given really gnarly designs, except for the Brontosaurus. The Brontosaurus has a pretty typical 30s Brontosaurus design, which I love. I love that at the same time they kind of pay tribute to the original designs, but giving them a modern flair. Like how the original T-Rex in the King Kong has really rough skin. So in this one, they give it osteoderms. It's just covered in osteoderms and it's got rough skin too. Or this guy right here, that's just kind of like a mix mash of a whole bunch of different ceratopsians, but probably mostly Pachyrhinosaurus, which I love. But he's got a really gnarly design, and I've heard somewhere that even like an adult V-Rex would be terrified of this guy. And I love that little piece of in-universe lore. And the bugs, both their CGI looks incredible, and their design was creepy as heck. And I thought it was so well done. What's really cool about this scene is that this whole bug chasm scene was present in the original King Kong, but it was cut. I believe that the reason why it was cut is because audiences were too afraid. Like, it was just too much for audiences. So Peter Jackson took it and said, yeah, this was terrifying back then. Let's make it even more terrifying now. And he has these slug things that are gobbling up Andy Serkis. You have these giant arachnids throwing people around, these crickets that are jumping all over the place. It's absolutely horrifying, and I love it. Or the dromaeosaurs. I know that they have a name in universe, and I'll place the text up right here, but I always space names when I start talking about them. But they are really cool. I love the overall CGI in the Stampede scene. I do admit that some of the green screening isn't exactly the best, especially in this sequence, but honestly, I think that it still is pretty dang passable, and I do still have a lot of fun watching it. I mean, you have a stampede of brontosauruses, and then you have these dromaeosaurs, these highly evolved dromaeosaurs chasing down people too. It's really fun. The whole thing is just really fun. I certainly do think that this movie does an incredible job at showing how dangerous Skull Island truly is. There's a lot of people who kick the bucket in this movie for various different reasons, whether it be from like being flown off the cliff by brontosauruses or simply being eaten up by these raptors. This is certainly a dangerous island, and they do such a great job at portraying how dangerous this island truly is. And now we just need to talk a little bit more about King Kong. So his story, I think, is great. He is obviously the last of his kind. That seems to be an occurring theme for King Kong. I mean, recently he does have his kind in, you know, the legendary films. But, you know, at this point in time, this Kong, he doesn't have a kind. And I also have to bring this up. It's crazy how conservative we used to be with Kong portrayals. Look how small this Kong is compared to the most recent one, the legendary King Kong. Huge, huge difference. This is certainly a lot more realistic in terms of its scaling, but it still is incredibly imposing because it's still huge. So, but it's so weird to me that we went from this to just skyscraper-sized Kong. That's just, I don't know, that's just fun to me. That's not a complaint. I love both movies equally, but I just think that's crazy how different it is. But again, I can't really gush enough about Andy Serkis's performance. I just think that he did a really solid job. And the CGI, I didn't really touch upon it earlier, but the CGI on Kong is also so good. There was one scene in particular when I saw it, I was just like, wow, that's great. And it's when Kong kind of like slams his arm down to stop Anne from running away. And you can see all of his hair on his arm. First of all, it's very well done. The texturing is great. But I love how you can see like little leaves and pieces of vegetation that are kind of stuck in his hair too. On top of that, I love how you can see all of the scarring and things like that that imply that Kong has been living a very difficult life here on Skull Island. A difficult life that we get to see bits and portions of, where he's kind of fighting off bats or he's fighting off the V-Rexes. You know, he just can't catch a break, poor Kong. No matter what kind of movie it is, Kong cannot catch a break. And then you bring him back to New York. And this extended scene is pretty dang good too. It's really cool to see the contrast between seeing him in the wild and how, you know, in tune with himself he is there, and then you see him in an environment that he's completely unfamiliar with. Of course, he has the set goal of going after Anne, trying to find Anne, but still seeing him confused with all of these different things is really fun to see. Not to mention the really sweet ice scene where he's found ice. You know, this is his first time. This is probably his first time seeing snow and ice. And so seeing him interact with that type of stuff was really fun and a nice, calm before the inevitable storm when the military arrives and they're trying to take him down. And then you get to the Empire State Building, which is probably the most iconic part of the original film. It was, of course, on the poster and everything. And it's very well done here. And it's incredibly sad to see Kong, officially, die in this film. I think it was really well done. Spoilers, I guess, for an almost 20-year movie. This movie is almost 20 years old. That's just not right. That's just not right. I saw this movie in theaters. Which, by the way, this movie terrified me when I saw it in theaters. As I said before, I was 5. I begged my parents to go and see that movie because there were dinosaurs in the trailer. I had to see the dinosaurs. I didn't realize there was going to be other stuff that terrified me, like those freaking bugs. I just... But no, all that good stuff, I think, was really well done in the movie. So, what are my overall thoughts with the film? Is it a perfect movie? Definitely not. Is it one of the best adaptations of King Kong? I certainly think so. I think there's a lot of merits to this film, and I do think it's worth returning to. It takes a while to get things really going. And, it's a very slow-paced movie. But I do think that a lot of it is very fun to watch. A lot of the action is really well done. And most of that does hold up very well by today's standards, especially the CGI and just the effects that went into this movie. So, can I recommend watching this movie? Yep. If you got about 3 hours to set aside, then definitely go and watch this movie. It is a very faithful adaptation to the original source material, and it just adds a lot of really unique flares to it. Just kind of like, it takes what already existed and just kind of makes it bigger, essentially. So, all around, really liked it. I liked it practically as much as I did when I was a kid. So, yeah, not too many negative things to say all around. Well, that is pretty much all I have for this one. Please like, comment, and subscribe to help support the channel because it really does help out a lot. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching and have an awesome day.